one of the challenges that I'm having from carrying this burden of the name is it has overridden my own personal identity. Right. So now nobody sees me for anything else than media.
Yeah.
Right. So even when I go to companies, they're like, I know an influencer. Sometimes that is very insulting.
Yeah.
My father did not pay whatever amount he paid in CU and in this thing for you to just call me an influencer, because they use it derogatorily sometimes to just say, what do you know? You're just an influencer.
Yeah.
Right. But other times people just spend a longer time trying to understand, okay, what can he do? What has he done?
In this episode, we're joined by Benjamin Dada, founder of one of the leading tech publications in Africa. We discuss everything from the Nigerian tech ecosystem to his experience as a tech journalist and his lesser discussed 9-to-5 life. He also analyzes the market of technology companies, shedding light on market saturation criteria, growth inhibitors, and much more. All right, enjoy the episode. Hello everyone, I'm Chuka.
And I'm Emmanuel.
And you're listening to Inside the Techosystem podcast, where we explore Nigeria's tech landscape one conversation at a time. Hey, ITT fam, your favorite podcast boys are back with another episode, and we are excited to be here once again. Chuka here, Emmanuel on the other side of the world, and we're going to be doing something different today on this episode, right? So I'm going to say something that excited me today, tech-related, of course, and something that annoyed me this week, not today, this week. Something that excited me and something that annoyed me this week, tech-related. So, what should I start with? Excited or annoyed?
Start with excited.
All right, excited. All right. So, I may be late to the party, but this week, I tried out the ChatGPT voice thing for the first time. So I've seen the demo online and whatnot, but I had never tried it. But a friend of mine came over and he had it on his phone, and we did it for a bit. And I was asking very basic questions like, what's the weather like today? And he looked at me like, what are you doing? That's something more complex, right? But I think it was fun. The response time was okay, was cool. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to AI taking over, So, okay. And something that annoyed me this week, tech related, of course. So, as you guys all know, I'm not a big Apple fanboy or Apple boy at all. The only Apple product I have is my MacBook. And this week I was cleaning up and I was deleting a lot of stuff actually. And, command delete. And then I went to my recycle bin to delete everything I had deleted from my Finder and stuff. And I highlighted everything and clicked command delete, right? That's what I used. Guys, my surprise when I went back to my Finder and every single file that I deleted before had come back waiting for me. I was so pissed.
That's crazy.
So what I learned this week was that you can't command delete stuff from the trash bin from on Mac. You have to empty it, because if you command delete it, it goes back. I don't know, maybe it's a fail-safe way of not allowing people to lose all their files and stuff. It annoyed me so much.
Command delete is the worst shortcut to use for a fail-safe anyways. But that's a very specific story though.
Yeah, it annoyed me because I had deleted so many things, and then when I went back to my Finder, and I was like, okay, things should be looking cleaner now. I saw every single file that I deleted.
That's
so I had to start over. So what's something that excited you this week, and what is something that annoyed you this week, tech related, of course?
Yeah, so I'm an Apple fanboy, so was it yesterday or 2 days ago that they did the WWDC conference? So apparently that conference is for developers, but I think everyone watches it.
Yeah.
So iOS 18, Mac OS 15, iPad OS 18. I'm excited about all of those. I already installed them on developer beta, and they're actually really nice. The only thing that is missing is the integration with ChatGPT. That one, I think it's going to come later. But it's very interesting. I didn't know Apple was going to integrate with ChatGPT. But surprise, surprise.
I'm so happy you guys finally have a calculator and you can move your icons around. I just want to say a big thank you to Tim Cook. You guys, congratulations to you, man. Congratulations. Yeah, so what's something that annoyed you this week?
This week, nothing really annoyed me. Probably work-related things. Java.
Okay.
Can't talk about it.
That's confidential. That's confidential. All right. Thank you so much. All right, guys. Guess what? We brought a superstar to the show today. And I know we say every single guest is a superstar, but we have Mr. Techosystem himself. Right? So when you hear Inside the Techosystem, we brought Mr. Techosystem himself. And, I don't know. I think this was, it was great. It was great. Emmanuel and I had the idea to invite Mr. Techosystem himself to Inside the Techosystem. And he also, was very pleasant, graced us with his presence. And we're so glad to have Benjamin Dada on the show today. Benjamin, Mr. Techosystem himself. Hello, how are you? How's everything going? How's life? How's work? We're so glad to have you. We're so glad to have you.
Hi, guys. It's so nice to be here. I know people always say that, but genuinely, it's nice to be here. I think I've followed you guys from afar, and I know we recently wrote about you guys as some of the top podcasts to follow in the country. So when I saw that invite, I'm like, oh, nice. You guys are doing cool stuff.
That was our we've made it moment. I think someone sent the post to us. I was like, oh wow. This is like one of the biggest tech publications in Nigeria, in Africa, and that was awesome. Thank you so much, man. We really appreciate it. So we'd like you to introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself and a little bit about your journey and how you got started in tech. Out of all the industries and career paths, you're here with us. So we'd like to know just a little bit more about you. The audience would love to know a little bit more about you.
100%. So, hi everybody. My name is Benjamin Dada. Unfortunately, I'm not a podcaster or a video creator, so people might not recognize my voice. But this is me in the flesh. What's it about me? So I think there are two sides to me, right? One is there's the media personality side, which most people know. But then there's the, information technology academic, right? That many people don't know. So I studied management information system in Covenant University, and that course sits within the computer and information sciences department. So literally, MIS and computer science were in the same department. So there I was learning programming, I was learning everything, and my final defense was actually to build a software, which I did, an electronic medical record system. Now, after that, I went to do an MSc in information technology management. And I think that was the place that made me start thinking about analytical rigor when it comes to journalism. And, when we dial back, I'll tell you. But basically, with the MSc, all my assessments were essays. Like literally, I didn't have one exam. I had like tons of essays, and I think maybe there was one or two that was like an open book test or something. But this is a school in the UK, right? And when my professor picks my essay, because before then, right? So let's say I went to do my MSc in 2016. The program was going to last 1 year. So within that period, I started writing as a journalist for another tech publication. Right. And, as a journalist, most of the work we were doing was very descriptive and narrative. And then when I thought, maybe I can write, let me write my essays. And then my professor picked the first assessment and was putting question mark, who told you?
Where are your sources?
Yes, no source, no reference, nothing. So the next thing was like it was just basically challenging the very way I knew how to do things. And I felt like, okay, can I bring this kind of academic rigor? Can I bring this kind of academic or analytical rigor to tech journalism? It's been 8 years now, and I'm like, it's hard. And there have been some lessons on the way, and I think we'll probably get into it. But generally, that was what really made me feel like if I was working in a traditional media publication, the operating system, the operating model would not really allow a reporter or a journalist the time to write every news story like an analytical piece, because there's a lot of quantity demand, right? You need to be publishing so many stories per day. There's a lot of like breaking news and stuff like that. So literally, that was what really made me start thinking about maybe I need to go do this thing on my own terms, and that's how I landed here. But generally, if you were going to remember anything about me, just know, yes, I'm the person you know from media point of view, but I'm also like a proper IT graduate. So I was the best graduating male student in my department, third best in the also like proper IT boy. Yeah.
Man, Benjamin, thank you so much for that story. I like the fact that you had to let everyone know that even though you run this media thing, like you're still him. So that's lovely. That's lovely. So I think I would say part of the technological skills you've gained, right, apart from the media thing, was what has propelled you to work as a product manager, I think, at Eyowo. And also, I think I read an article by you about products and partnerships and stuff. And, can you tell us a little bit more about that, actually?
100%. So now, when I park the media side of me, the proper IT guy, that went to school to study IT, works in a company. So I've been working at 9 to 5s for like 6 years, 7 years. Now, when I was coming out of school, I thought, what's the role that would allow me merge computer science and business studies? Because MIS as a course was just that. Literally, we're taking computer science courses and taking business management, accounting, finance. And one day in 2014, somebody told me product management. So since 2014, I've always had it in mind that product management is the place for me. Unfortunately, I've never had the chance to do it full time, and I will explain. So when I finished school 2016, went for MSc, finished 2017, when I came back, I had the opportunity to work with a former boss, right? Because I had interned with him in 2015.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I was like, okay, what do you want to do? I told him product management. So I was like, oh yeah, sure, like that. They're building Eyowo, and I can be a product manager on that. But at the time, there was already a product manager, right? So it was almost as if both of us were clashing, right? And then it felt like the person was trying to protect her devs from, I don't know, like it just wasn't gelling, right? It wasn't working out. So I went to tell this boss, and I was like, okay, you know what I'll do? I'll split the role, right? Let this existing product manager focus on internal product, like not internal product, but managing the developers that are building the product. You focus on everything that makes the product come to life. So the partnerships, the operations. So, when you need to go and meet Paystack to give you card funding API, or when you need to meet Interstreet to give you a pay code so that people can withdraw at the ATM without card. All of those product partnerships and even compliance operations that makes the product work was what he told me to do. And literally, that's what I did for like a year. And then I went on to something else. Between 2019 and, more recently, I didn't end up doing product management again. And I've just been doing everything that means, operations, enterprise sales, and a little bit of marketing. By the way, I don't like to do marketing for startups because of the kind of expectation they have of me, having come from a media entrepreneur, media owner. So I don't like to do it. And also I feel like some of the ideas I have on marketing are a bit unorthodox. So, you might want to be converting a user on the first touch point. And me, I'm like, no, we need to go through a journey. But most CEOs don't have the budget. They don't have the time for that. They just want, we did adverts. How many people did you convert? But this advert is just an awareness campaign. So I don't like to do marketing. However, I did marketing for a bit, for 3 months. So it's not on my profile, but like I worked at Fair Money for 3 months or 4 months. And when they offered me, they said, what do you want to do? I said, I'll do content marketing. Okay, this was 2021. I was already the Benjamin Dada that you people know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'll do content marketing. And, because email marketing is like my bread and butter, like I doubled open rates. I started trying to build out a new vertical for their content game. And then I helped work on existing copies for push notification and all those customer.io touch points. So, I did product partnerships first. Then I did pre-sales. Then I went to do small content marketing. And then now I'm back to business product management. And what does that one mean? That one is basically, you would do the product management, which is like user research, market research, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to working directly with engineers, you would hand off to a technical product manager, who in some sense is like an engineering manager, right? So that's the person actually managing the devs. That's the person managing tickets, etc. So that's the space I'm in now. And, I'd say in the last 8 years, if there's anything I've learned when it comes to working at startups, is my strength is in taking things from 0 to 1. Because I can see the full picture. I know how to couple all the things needed to start something and start it fast. So that's it in a nutshell.
And that's dope.
That's very interesting.
And I actually, you are different and you're very unique, right? Because you're running Benjamin Dada full time, like the blog, the publication, right? And you also said you've been doing 9 to 5 for the longest, and that conflicts everything I know about entrepreneurship. But apart from that, you've also experimented a lot, and I think this is something I try to tell people. People just getting into tech or getting started in tech, sometimes they're like, okay, I want to learn something and I'm just going to stick with, which I totally agree. Like, I believe you should structure your learning, stick to one thing, but people are not open to experimenting. Like you mentioned, you do not like doing marketing for startups, but you've done content marketing, you did content marketing for Fair Money, you've tried many different things. And I think it's important for people to be open to experimentation, especially because tech is basically, we're all here because we wanted to feed our curiosity, at least most of us. Yeah. I don't know whether he's here to feed his account balance.
That's true.
But yeah.
Well, just not the same thing, yeah. Money Points is actually the 4th fastest growing company in Africa. So somehow I had one publication, like physical copy. They printed like, I think 150 companies on that list. And when I read the title, well, it says fastest growing company, not fastest growing fintech or fastest growing tech company. So fastest growing company. On that list, there is BOA, the BOA Foods, BOA Cement. There is, I think, Transcorp, and Money Point is number 4 in Africa, not only in Nigeria. So it means Money Point must be doing a lot of things and they must be growing a lot. So how are you actually able to juggle all the work that you do there with everything else you're doing? Because that's something to... that's something. Yeah.
So it's a popular question. I think that, so there are a few things. Let me put a disclaimer that the path I have taken, if somebody sees it on the outside and they try to copy it, they will most likely run into trouble. Right? I'll come back to that hopefully. But then with regards to working full-time and doing BD, I would say the only time I did BD full-time, contrary to what people think, was in the first year. And this was because I was trying to kickstart it. right? But from like, I think 6 months, and this is something for any content creator out there, you only need to do something for 6 months consistently before people begin to associate you with that thing, and before people begin to respect the effort and respect and just really come to you. So after like 6 months of publishing, people started reaching out to say, hey, can I contribute? Can I be a reporter? Can I be an intern? Can I be this? So like slowly and slowly, the level of impact or the level of commitment I've had to give to BD has continued to dip over the years. And I think, in a few months from now, there'll be a rebrand. So that's a T for what you guys are building, right? So
we love teas, we love exclusives, we love them all.
Yeah. So, but essentially, like, entrepreneurship is interesting, right? So when I started BD, I built it as a bootstrapped company, right? So I was like the major shareholder, if not the only shareholder, right? So I could run it on my terms. I could determine what kind of profitability or sustainability I wanted the company to have, right? If you're doing this in another environment, you might not be able to achieve the same kind of thing. So long story short is I've not run BD full time in at least 2 to 3 years. So right now I have like a managing editor that runs day to day, and I'm just like a chairman of the board or whatever you want to call it. So that's it. I don't believe personally that people can do two things and do the two things very well. Like I think one will suffer. So I focus on the 9 to 5 that is paying me, putting food on my family's table, and I let BD to worry about itself and contribute where I can.
Benjamin, are you giving us insights? Are you giving us tips and tricks? Emmanuel and I, we are kind of polar opposites, right? Emmanuel is a core 9 to 5 guy. Like, he loves it. Like, I come to Emmanuel like,
who said I love it? It's me, man.
Well, for the years I've known Emmanuel, I could be like,
I actually do like it.
I could be like, bro, look, we could launch the next best thing. And Emmanuel is just like, look, man, I have work tomorrow. Don't stress me. Right? But I've always been the one to, like, in my head, I'm always like, yo, I want to start my own thing. Right? There is beauty and structure in 9 to 5, definitely. But like, I don't know, sometimes this that entrepreneurship ginger that takes over, when you say have some runway until you exhaust your
yes. So there's that restlessness that you can have. But I also wanted to touch on something that I said earlier, which is like, if you look at the journey that I've gone through from outside, it can look nice. But if you don't understand some of the trade-offs or some of the decisions at each point in time, and you try to just copy and paste one part of it, you run into trouble. Let me give you an example. I did my MSc immediately after BSc. I don't think that's the best thing to do. I think that already doing your BSc immediately after secondary school is already a very flawed way of helping people figure out what they truly want to do. Right? Because many people get into university, they've already picked a course without really knowing if that's what they want to focus on long term or if that's what they would enjoy. So when you now have MSc opportunity, is that not your chance to right a wrong or like get things right? So if you do it immediately after, again, two things happen. One is, in many cases, because you don't still yet have years of experience, people would price you like a semi-entry level person. You won't be entry level. They'll respect you. They'll give you the MSc, maybe some money on top, but it won't be that education or that point that would transform your career from a, manager to VP. Like, you won't get that flick, that switch, right? Yeah. That's number one. Number two is, you won't be able to contribute and benefit from your MSc if you don't yet have years of experience to rely on when these topics are being discussed in class. Because at the end of the day, masters or further degree is very expensive. there are people from different walks of life, different stages in their journey. You have MDs coming to do the same MSc as you, a fresh grad. So if you truly want to benefit from even the course of like the topics they will teach and the network and everything, I think it's best to get some years in. Now, the number of years depends, and that's a whole conversation for another time, right? And then, once you get some years in, you can now decide, okay, I want to do an MSc because XYZ. Topic about MSc or MBA is another conversation too. Now, you were saying something about people being open to experimenting. I think that every career offers us three things, right? One is variety, two is money, and three, I've forgotten the third one, but I think is learning, right? So for me, every job I took is about, am I going to learn something new there, or am I just going to collect big money, right? If I'm not going to learn something new there, let me just collect money because I'm an expert in this thing, like because I already know this thing like the back of my hand. So I'm just going to be doing the routine stuff and stuff. So like if I'm doing content marketing, there's very little you can teach me in content marketing. I've used MailChimp, used all the products that you can think of. I've built the website.
That's a flex right there.
There is the one, right? So if I'm doing the marketing stuff, like I need to be like maybe a VP or something that is really, really top.
Yeah.
Now, but if you're putting me to do another thing, like, oh, maybe you want me to, I don't know, what have I not touched? Mention any career. Okay, engineering. I can be a junior engineer.
Okay.
Right? Because I'm coming to learn, right? So that's number one. Now, in terms of looking for variety, you need to be careful because there are largely two classifications, specialist and generalist. If you don't plan to be an entrepreneur at some point, if you go the generalist route, when you get to middle level management, you might be stuck because companies will no longer need someone that can do everything. They want people that can do one thing very well. So like a growth stage company wants someone that has 5 years in just back-end engineering, right? Or that has 5 years in just product management so that person can be maybe a manager or director, right? So, you need to get holistic advice and consider like different things before you make a decision on your career path. The biggest learning I've had in the last 2 years is that one, a career is long, right? And when we're young, we always treat a career as if it's the next 2 years, it's the next 3 years, next 5 years. Brother, if you started working at 22, you're going to be working for at least 20 years. You can literally, and if you think it takes 10 years to become an expert, you can literally have two different careers in that 20-year lifespan. Meanwhile, most people still work to 50, so that's 30 years if we're being honest. But let's just assume everybody wants to retire at 40.
Yeah, people work to 60.
Retire at 40. So, let's say, so for me, the way I was thinking about it, was that, okay, now I've opened all these things small. Over the span of my 20-year career, whatnot, I can now begin to dip in. But it's not that easy, like, because there's time and chance, there's opportunity. Sometimes you're at a stage in life where maybe you're trying to get married or you need more money, and there's no opportunity for you to go work in the thing that you have hoped to be your cash cow. So, like, just take out that whatever thing you do, know the game you are playing part-time, right? Know the game you are playing part-time. And if you see someone that looks like they're making massive progress, they might be playing a different game. Classic example, and I'll end here. When I did my MSc, I was earning more than most of my classmates because I had MSc. But now, some of these classmates have just gone to do MBA and literally director at Coca-Cola. There is no way my salary and this babe's salary is the same thing.
That's very solid advice.
There's no way my salary. But in the beginning, right, my salary was more. So if I was wise, what I would have done is in the beginning, I stack up that cash, try to figure out how to invest it or do something, because I know that over time it will tail off. That massive hockey stick growth will begin to taper down. Same thing. This one wasn't MBA. When I started, I was earning maybe 300K, she was earning 150K. But she chose specialist. So she was doing product management When she now went for MSc, she got a Google job.
Oh,
there is no way my salary and this base salary. But if somebody saw me in 2021, country manager of a fintech, I was winning dollars. Like, and I could get that job because, I had generally skill set and that was what was required at that time, right?
Yeah.
They will be envious. But now, like, if you are stuck to your own thing for 5 years, you probably be a VP or be a director now, and you're in a much better place. So I think everybody just needs to know the game that they are playing part time. I think for me, at some point, I will still end up like a startup founder. I think.
Looking forward to it.
So I don't feel too bad if now I'm struggling with working in growth stage companies because blah blah blah. But please just know the game you're playing part time. Finish.
Yeah. That's very solid advice. And I somehow went with that advice unknowingly. So I was done with school. I also went to Common University. I studied computer science. And I remember my sister used to pressure me to apply to do masters immediately. She was like, just do it quickly. You can get scholarship, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, chill. So fortunately for me, I got a job even before I was done with school. So I started working. I was like, wait, though, see all this experience I'm gaining. So I was working in a very tiny company. We were 5 people in total. And I was working so hard, learning a lot. And then I told my sister, look, I'm not doing masters again. And 2 years later, I reconsidered it. Should I still do masters? And then I realized that if I was going to do masters, I don't really need it, at least for my own profession. Maybe if I was going to do AI or data science or a different path, I would have done it. But I definitely agree that you should spend some time before you jump to the next thing, because you spend all of this money and then that's good advice.
The master students listening to this podcast episode are not going to like this. Well, it's all good.
Yeah, let's switch a bit to Nigerian Techosystem. So I'm going to ask you the same question that Chuka asked me, but more broadly. So what excites you the most about the Nigerian Techosystem? I know it has its flaws. There've been a lot of recent news about shutdowns, companies not returning investors' money, all kinds of things. But the ecosystem is still growing. It's still like more companies are popping up. But what excites you the most about the Nigerian ecosystem compared to every other ecosystem in the world?
Interesting question. I think it's the optimism, right? And that optimism comes with a lot of energy. So I think if you want to build anything that hasn't been built before, you need some level of delulu, like delusion, right? That makes you blind to previous failures or realities on ground that just cause inertia.
Yeah.
So when I look at the Nigerian tech ecosystem, on a broader horizon, we are young. Like, compare this to Asia. We're probably where Asia was maybe 10, 15 years ago, right? But on a smaller horizon, it's been at least 7 years of venture capital pumping in the Nigerian tech ecosystem. And this has meant that some companies through that cycle have matured, some have gone down. People are realizing that their total addressable market is now actually 200 million people. But they are still bold enough to dream big. Like, they are still like, even founders that their companies have shut down for one reason or the other, they're still trying to build another company. Like, there's so much belief that until blood finish, until blood finish, cannot finish from like the child of a king. So like, that optimism and energy, I think, is what's going to help us get past a lot of legacy issues, a lot of this is how things are done, a lot of bureaucracy. I'll give you an example. So if you look at open banking, all right, open banking as a sector or as a space is nascent. The UK is one of the very advanced ones, even US, but in many other places, there's not much open banking going on. If you were building a startup in 2020, you were taking a bet that Nigeria will catch up to the open banking wave. And by the time they catch up to it, you will be well positioned to milk it or maximize it, right? You could have said, oh, these people, open banking is a new technology, they will never get it, or something, and you just end up not building, right? So I think there is that level of optimism I see from people who are, there's a downside, of course, because you don't then count properly the cost or what you can become. But like the fact that people are like, oh, I can leave my job and go build a company that will do XYZ. I think that's very that's very interesting.
That's cool.
Do you think it's because we're Nigerian? That's why we have this level of optimism.
I think there's some level of hustle culture that's playing a part. Right? Normally, in many places, entrepreneurship can be driven by, let's say, hustle spirit, passion, quote unquote, even though I don't believe any for-profit thing is altruistic. But yeah, hustle spirit, be different, just a desire to do something differently. But there are many factors driving entrepreneurship in Nigeria. There is hunger, there is social status and credibility. There is now the potential for prosperity, right? Now, I've tweeted about how the social status and credibility piece comes in. Some people were saying, this is not true. Why do you do mom and pop shop? Why are you looking to build a startup? Like, if you know it's just business you want to do, why didn't you just start selling something by the roadside? One shop, you can still be profitable. In fact, you can even do a retail chain. You be your own shop, right? But don't do startup. But like, the world at this time has its eyes on startups. They've had it since the time of Google, or 25 years ago, 20 years ago. But like, you enter a global league, right, that doesn't take into consideration your passports for the first time. So when you build a startup and you get into a YC, for the first time, you're like, I don't need to have money to get into YC, right? Because if your parents do not have money for school fees in US, no US for you, right? You are sitting with people whose parents probably came from money, whose ideology is different, whose optimism is even greater. Have you seen optimism in America?
That's crazy.
Somebody said they wanted to raise, what did OpenAI say?
7 trillion.
Wanted to raise 100 billion or 7 trillion.
My goodness.
7 trillion. So like, there is so much to gain. There's so much, the push factors and the pull factors are impacting adequately to force this spirit of entrepreneurship, this spirit of value creation and productivity in Nigeria. That's what I think.
That's
fair enough.
That's true.
Yeah, it really puts things into perspective. Like, for the first time, in a way, everybody is on the same level playing field.
Yeah.
Like, okay, because people say, if you are born in Nigeria, life is already leading you once, right? Right? So like, for the first time, like, we're starting from scratch, right? You bring your idea, I bring my idea, you execute, I execute. Let's see who makes it out, right?
Yeah.
So thanks for putting that into perspective, really.
Yeah. And on the flip side, what's one thing that annoys you?
So the thing that's currently annoying me is the trend of startup founders feeling like they are better than the next person. Right? You be startup founder, you may be God.
I want to hear this one.
You're a startup founder, you're not God. So like, you need to be humble. There's a pride, no doubt. There's a pride that comes with, oh, look at the work of my hand. Like, giving 10 people direct employment. I'm building this thing that maybe Facebook can buy tomorrow or whatever. Like, there's a pride that comes with creating something, right?
Yeah.
Even Jesus and God, all of them, they have that thing. But like, when you speak to other people who have done things outside of your industry or your sector, do you also respect the work that has gone into what they do? Right? And when you act, are you expecting everybody to make excuses for you? You're not paying somebody's salary. and you're saying that, oh, it's hard to run startup. What do you mean it's hard
I
to
see
run
where you're
startup?
going.
If it's hard to run startup, pack that startup and go and do SME or mom and pop stuff.
I agree.
Right? Somebody's talking to you and you'll be doing, oh, not gonna make it or you will not get it. What are you doing? What are you doing that the world has not done before? Like there is a lot of, so I think that optimism has been taken too far now. Like let us calm down and let's be level-headed here, right? What you're building is a startup because the pathways for profitability, the operating models, those things are not fully known. And that's what gives you that potential for high growth. Because if it was fully known, everybody will be in it, and then it will normalize your potential profits. But when you speak to people in other industries, like in media, in I don't know, name the industry. Media is one I see the most, right? But like there's some looking down that they use to speak to people in those industries as if they don't know what they are doing, and the startup founders are the only ones that know what they are doing, right? So let's all be humble and keep an open mind, right? There are many unknowns that you might have, that your ignorance and pride. By the way, I heard one quote about was it some Bill Gates or someone that said, like, nobody cares if you have pride or not, if you're getting things done, or if you have something to back it up. But many people here, they still don't have anything to back it up. So like it's like what is so that's the
There's one thing I was talking to a friend about some years back, that in Nigeria, our biggest problems in startups are probably operation based and not necessarily the technology. So for example, if you want to start a prop tech or start a real estate tech company, your biggest issue is not the tech, it's the operations. And where else can you run to for operations? The people who have been there before, basically. The traditional people that you would tear down, they're the ones that have all the expertise. So at first, you might raise money, build a tech, but you still end up needing those people. So there is no point raising shoulder at the beginning. Just be humble. So yeah, definitely agree. If I was to start a business today, I think I don't think I would do tech, to be honest, because there's a lot more money I would make if I do traditional business. That's what people don't know. In Nigeria, it's very, I don't want to say it's very easy because people raise eyebrows, but to some extent, it's easier to make money from SME or like normal traditional business in Nigeria than in some other countries. But yeah.
And to get your first 10,000 users.
Yes, because the TAU, like you said, is not a lot. I was looking at the breakdown. So half of Nigeria is poor. The people who can afford, I think, 1,000 USD a year, they're not up to 10 million or so. So if you're going to be building a high-tech product, then just know that it's only for people that live in Ireland or something that would use it. So it's quite interesting. But speaking of which, Fintech is actually the poster child of the Nigerian ecosystem. Like anytime there is any announcement, if it's not Fintech, then it's probably EdTech or Biotech. Okay, Biotech these days, they've not really been saying much because of the recent, everybody knows that. But do you think that Fintech is, in quotes, getting overcrowded? Because that's a common question people ask. Like, okay, we have so many Fintech apps. I personally think we don't have enough. But what do you think?
I need to know how many Fintech apps Benjamin has on his phone.
So my own case is even different because I have apps for many reasons. One is the work I do most times involves research, user research, blah, blah, blah.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Two, also because sometimes I just like to be in the know. I subscribe to the email, but I don't want to have too many apps. But yeah, I have a ton of apps. And I'm also one of the early customers of like new products, right? Just a way to support and a way to see what people are building.
Okay.
So for Fintech, my thinking is that you're correct, first of all. Like Fintech is like the hot stuff. If you count 3 startups, at least one will be Fintech, right? But if you want to truly understand, you need to look at the categories, right? when you break fintech down into categories, then you can now say, oh, is this sub-category overcrowded? And it might not even be a question about being overcrowded. It might be a question of, is there a market leader?
Yeah.
Like, is there an obvious winner? So let's take it like this. Fintech, payments, savings, loans, insurance, pension. Right? Now, in payments, I can either put cross-border payments under or put cross-border as its own thing because of the complexity there is mad. So let me put cross-border payments, then domestic payments or digital bank, blah, blah, blah. Now, in payments, you can still break it down. There's acquirer, like a payment gateway, right? Paystack, all those people that build payment gateway. There is a switch, right? The person that makes sure, you can interoperate across multiple different financial institutions and whatnot, right? Blah, 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 blah. Now, in savings, the people there. So when you pick any of those categories or subcategories, you can then begin to ask, is there a market leader? If there is a market leader, then there is some indication that anybody building something in that industry is building in a saturated space, right? Because the available customers for you to acquire will be very marginal.
Yeah.
Right? There's a market leader who is the market leader for a reason, right? So if you don't have anything madly disruptive, because at the end of the day, everybody in fintech, it's the same thing we're doing. Raise to zero for fees, right? And then acquire many customers and serve them more things. So that's why they call it bundling and rebundling, unbundling, rebundling, blah, 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 blah. You get. So I think savings, for example, there are like two major players there. If I go and build something in savings and I don't have any major thing there, I'm not very excited as an investor. I'm not very excited in that. But when you come to cross-border payments, fintech's plenty, but there's no market leader.
That's true. That's actually true.
There's no market leader.
I think some have tried.
Yeah.
But I don't think they've hacked it yet.
Nobody is the market leader yet because... so when you begin to unpack it...
Why do you think that's so? Why do you think there's no market leader for cross-border payments yet?
There's a lot of complexity, right, in cross-border payment. And this complexity starts from regulation.
Yeah.
Oh,
now,
fair.
Cross-border payments already includes 2 jurisdictions at least. So you worry about regulation from the sending jurisdiction, regulation from the receiving jurisdiction, right? So if I'm doing cross-border payments that wants to pay from Nigeria to China, what license will allow me as a Nigerian, a fintech, do Nigeria to China payment? My boss here, there's no fintech license. So there's no license. It's only a bank that can do Nigeria to China. Now, but if I'm doing China to Nigeria, there's a license. There's a license from Nigeria, which is IMTO.
International money something, right?
The IMTO is the International Money Transfer Operator license that allows you bring money into Nigeria. But I still need to get license in China because I'm going to be originating those transactions from China. Do you understand? So, first of all, the regulatory landscape is already what makes it complex. 2, the middlemen, the intermediaries, right? And they are there for many reasons. But essentially, if one of them fails, it can affect the entire value chain, blah, 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 blah. So point is fintech crowded? I would say that's a wrong question to ask. Let's break it down and let's find the category you really care about. Is this one crowded? Right? Then we can begin to find an answer. Right? So, but yeah, that's
a very interesting way to put it, actually. Yeah. But I think that there were some recent, is it policy or licenses that were given out to more players in one particular part of payments, either payment or fintech. I can't remember which one. I think it's lending. Like they approved some licenses to more players, like up to 200 or something. I'm not sure. But I guess there will be more players in those kind of, in those subcategories. But in terms of payment processing, I think it's not saturated. We have Paystack, Flutterwave, MoneyPoint. and we have InterSwitch.
Okay.
Payment processing is a very touchy one because there is a market leader that was there not by market forces. It's not forces of demand and supply that made them market leader. It was artificial. So NIBSS,
Okay.
NIBSS is the market leader, right? And they have too much leverage.
But there's now a new player in this, right?
It depends on the angle. So UPS, is that the one you're talking about? UPSL, they gave them PTSA license, like payment terminal service aggregator license. Before it was only NIBSS that they allowed.
There's one funny meme about NIBSS holding the entire fintech industry.
Yes.
maybe I will include it in the show notes or something.
If you don't find a way to democratize NIBSS, so the funny thing is people always say, oh, you can use any other switch, because I think the highest value product that NIBSS offers is their NIP, their transfers, right? And most people use it. So, number one, every fintech that launches in Nigeria wants to sign up on NIP list, right? Once they get their license, so that when you go to send to bank, they will be there, right? Two, there is already that, like, I can't even remember. Is it the requirement to integrate to NIBSS? I think there's already a requirement, but I don't remember the reg now, right? To integrate to NIBSS. So, like, it's almost a no-brainer to leverage NIBSS service to start with, right? But the second thing is, because NIBSS has now been here for so long, and they've built both, like, all the nodes, so they have many institutions, they have network effect that can drop the cost. So NIBSS is charging you 3.75 naira per transfer. An InterSwitch that has their own NIP or like their own EFT, so electronic fund transfer network, can probably not afford to charge you that. eTransact too has their own switch. What's up? They don't have as many banks on it. So there's a reason why NIBSS and NIP would always be there. But like payment reliability. So if all of us are just collecting PSSP license, like payments service provider license, we are still limited by that infrastructure that we're all connected to. Because if NIBSS is down, we're all down. And there's nothing we can really do to innovate it. Yes, people do very interesting things. They try to make every transfer local. So when you want to send money from GT to UBA, you go and debit your company's UBA pool accounts so that you pay the beneficiary UBA. My brother, it is what it is. But
that's very interesting.
This is core fintech territory.
And in terms of innovation, do you think that these fintech companies are the most innovative, or there are other categories of tech startups that are more innovative than fintech?
That's an interesting question. I don't even have a yardstick to measure. I don't have a yardstick to measure. I'm more familiar with
fintech.
For fintech,
I'm more familiar. Let me give you a fintech because, a yardstick. So in fintech, the early days, I think 2015, 2016, being able to pay online was innovation. Then a few years later, that's expected by everybody, right? And then they brought in savings. So you being able to save because now you can charge online. And then after that, I don't think there is any new big thing, maybe mono, so that you can build stuff on top of that. But aside from that, like there hasn't been any, to be honest, like money movement is not that, you can't build innovation on money movement. Like all you need to do is facilitate to make it faster, basically. But in other industries, for example, edtech, you're basically carrying teaching online, which means you solve the problem of finding a teacher to come to your house or you going to find the location, right? That's some kind of innovation. For medical technology or medtech, I really don't understand that industry, but they seem to raise a lot of money. Maybe for some reason.
I think I have a yardstick now. So my yardstick is Which industry has been able to unlock non-consumption the most? So what I mean is this. When you look at the market, there is, let's say the market is total addressable market, 1 million people. Or no, let's not start from total. Let's start from population. The population is 1 million people. Now, your addressable market is 500K. But there's another 500K that is not addressable because they don't even use any alternative. So that's what we call non-consumption.
Okay.
So my yardstick is anybody that has been able to increase consumption or, eat into that non-consumption subpopulation is the most innovative. And I will break it down.
Companies.
Now, what is betting? So there are many ways to look at it. So now, when Uber came, right, consumption meant, you are using yellow taxi, right? You're using private driver, one guy that you just call, I'm in the airport, come and pick me, he will pick you, 40K, bam, right? But there was no consumption. And guess what? Me, that used to trek from my school to my house, I was not consuming transportation services, right? So innovation is, how do you make Benjamin that is not consuming anything, how do you bring him into the fold in a way that you will now own him as you will now own him as his provider, right? So fintech example is formal sector, informal sector. Consumption, all of us that have bank accounts, all of us that have mobile money, all of us that have any form of electronic way or like any way of sending money digitally. Non-consumption, somebody that keeps money under the bed. Because it's not as if they are using any alternative or anything. So if I've been able to build something that eats at that population, then I would think of myself as the most innovative. Because innovation is not so, invention is, you're building something new. Innovation is you're improving something. You are, basically. So if I think about betting sector, what was the population and what was the addressable market before they came? And when I think about it,
I think for betting, I used to see these people in Lagos where they stay in like there's always one red thing that looks like a dial and one big piece of paper. I think that's how they used to do that, like betting before. So young people were not necessarily into that. But then when they brought betting to phones, like you could bet online, then all of a sudden there's an entire market.
That's a good example to me. That's a good example.
And apparently, the betting companies are probably one of the biggest customers of payment processing because they have high frequency transactions.
But may I bust your head? Betting is a high risk. Not betting, right? So they classify gambling, casino, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, it's a long story. But yes, betting is just an interesting story. If me, that wasn't using any form of betting provider before, now starts betting for the first time. So I don't know if you've heard any of these metrics from startups where we say we were the first bank account of this user. So for instance, one cross-border company was saying, for 33% of their customers in XYZ, maybe Sudan or wherever, they were the first known financial services account that they had.
So they banked the unbanked.
They banked the unbanked in that sense. Okay. So that's how I would think of the most innovative sector. I don't know much about the other sector, so I can't really say they're innovative or they're not innovative. But yeah,
that's nice. So now that we talked about fintech this way, I'm thinking if this question still makes sense. So the question I was going to ask is, do you think we would benefit from a lot of M&As? So recently, some companies have acquired each other, and I'm wondering if that's a good thing in general for our ecosystem. Are we too young to have M&As? And if we do, is it going to benefit us at the moment?
It's a good question. It's a good question. So first of all, we're not. Let me not rush. So there's this saying that when a company dies, the ecosystem benefits. Is a funny saying. But what they are trying to liken it to is that when a tree dies, it goes back into the soil as manure. Like, it helps the rest of the trees in the forest to mature well, right? But there's also a counterpoint that when you have too many trees dying, your forest no longer holds because there needs to be a density of trees to make a forest, right? So now when you take both perspectives, you now begin to see why M&A can be important. Now, M&A is important to founders, investors, and the broader ecosystem because one, it provides an exit path for shareholders. And once you provide that exit path, you become a success story. And in return, you lead to more people attempting to create companies. So when Paystack got acquired by Stripe, many people decided, they must create their own startup. I'm sure Twitter is probably one of them. So that success story, that acquisition, led to more inspiration for the people to build. But for investors, they're like, hey, and I had 300 million naira sitting somewhere. Why don't I just put it in Paystack and I would have 14x my return, right? So acquisitions are good. They're a good case study. They're a sign that, the startup assets class
is maturing.
Is truly high risk, high reward. What you don't want is high risk and no reward, right? And this is why, like, when US starts giving good interest rates, fewer people are putting money in startup because why am I going high risk when US has increased interest rates that I'm not doing anything, I'm not working on, I'll just be getting my 5% and stuff like that. So when you look at the market climate now, everybody knows funding has slowed down, right? So I've been looking at the data. So before we were going in a bell curve shape, right? And I fear that we're at that peak that is either begin to come down or flatten a bit. Now, nobody knows what the condition to return that upward tick is going to be. So for now, people just want to keep things flat. How do you keep things flat? You conserve runway or you go into M&A, right? So if I can find someone that wants to merge with my company, my investors and my shareholder will still get some value, right? Because they don't lose all of their investment. If I find someone that would acquire the company, they will get some value. Typically, I think there's a timeline of 10 years that everybody in the ecosystem works with. So 10 years because the average fund life cycle is like 10 years, right? But also, if you look at companies that have gone public, like an IPO, right? Or companies that have truly had massive liquidity events, it's 7 to 10 years. So I think we're still in the early days of the kind of M&As or exits that we can be seeing. My fear is I hope too many companies don't die before they can exit. Because to get to that desired point, your growth rate needs to be at a particular level that makes you a worthy target. If not, the person that is buying you will be like, I can go and build myself. And you get what I'm saying? So I don't think the ecosystem is too young. Yes, some exits can happen. If it happens prematurely, the return to investors is not going to be as great. Investors are always looking for, let me not use the word unicorn, but they're always looking for that one company that can return the entire fund, not just give them 2x on their investments. And I hope everybody on the podcast will understand that, right? So, classic example, I invested 50K in this company. If it does 2x, it's giving me 100K.
100K,
Right. But I invested 50K from a fund of 1 million. So if it can do 200x.
Yeah, then you can,
or whatever the number it is to get to 1 million. That is the kind of thing that VCs are looking for.
Yeah.
So M&As, especially if it's M, I don't know if M in itself, the merger will create that kind of return, right? But I think Paystack's case, it was like a 14x return for some investors. But if I look at the VC firm, I don't know if it returned that VC firm's fund, right? So long story short, the market needs M&As to happen because of the kind of inspiration it will give to the ecosystem to keep building, the encouragement for more investment to come in, etc. But I think that we're still a few years out from potential land mile acquisitions, the ones that will give us big bangs. You know, there have been some M&As that we shouldn't even be calling M&A. We should just call it salvage company. Yeah. They saved the company from going to zero. But you know what we want. What we want is an M&A that this was a fast growing company. It could be going better for them, but this company saw them well and bam. In Africa, we had that with Sendwave and World Remit. They acquired Sendwave for like 500M. Bust my head. See, that Sendwave was spun out of Wave. So when you see the likes of Patek just eating chicken on a yacht, you know why? Because they're one of the investors in Wave. And they spun out Sendwave and sold it 500M. Given whatever share Patek would typically have had, you know, that can give you a context of what they would have, you know, taken home. But generally, those are the kind of M&As we want, because IPOs are a lot trickier for African companies. But again, everybody don't register for true. US. Anyway, long story short, but that's
Delaware. Anyways, I just feel you need to tell everybody listening, if you don't know what M&As mean, they're mergers and acquisitions. So just putting that out there. Benjamin, I would like to... Are we good?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, we're good, yeah. I think Benjamin's audio is...
Oh, yeah, it's good.
Okay, all right, Benjamin, I'd like to circle back to BD, right? And journalism, media in general, right? So we all know the way journalism is in Nigeria. It's like a risky game. I don't really know how to put it, but you know, even especially investigative journalism, right? It doesn't have the best outlook for some. I can't even say for some reason. I know the reason, right? Nigeria is journalists put stories out there, and you're getting threats on the phone and whatnot, right? And it can be very discouraging. What would be your advice to somebody who wants to get into journalism? Right? They've seen BD, they've seen the work you're doing, and they're like, "Oh, this is really interesting. I hope to be like BD when I grow up." Right? What advice would you give to someone like that? Is still in Nigeria, is in the Techosystem, or is just journaling? Is just doing journalism in a different industry, no matter what it is. Right? What advice would you give someone like that?
So, I mean, stay out of jail, that's the first one. But BD no good deal. But see, there are different motivations for getting into, let me call it content creation, right? Journalism is the one that I feel is the academic version, right? But at the core of it, journalism is literally narrating events, like journaling, like, you're narrating what happened. This is what happened. Chuka slapped Emmanuel. This is what it is. And then, you can now get Benjamin to comment, oh, why did Chuka slap Emmanuel? What was your perspective? Or you get Emmanuel's brother. So, there are different dimensions to content creation. I think people need to decide the type they want to go for. Now, you can be David Hundain, who is an investigative journalist. He's a solo journalist, right? He's investigative, But if you're going to do investigative journalism, you need to make sure that you have the balls for it, right? Okay. And you have the backing for it, right? And you have the processes for it. Balls means you have mind. You can look any CEO in there and say yes. You slap this person in your office. But backing is, if push comes to shove and you get to a legal battle, do you have money to hire a lawyer? Or do your shareholders or your investors have a legal might, right? And then the process is, before you churn out something, do you go through reviews? Do you make sure that you are, doing the right thing? So that's investigative. But if you don't want to be a David Ondein, you can be David Adeleke. Two Davids. Now,
David
Adeleke churns out Communic newsletter.
Yeah, Communic.
Right.
Yeah.
This is like content creation on, the media industry in Africa. So that one positions him more as a thought leader in that space. I don't expect to see investigative journalism stuff on there, right? But, David Ondein, David Adeleke, they will both grow followers. I think David Adeleke has almost 90K followers, if not more, self on LinkedIn and stuff, right? So that there's that. And then the third thing is, if you don't want to be an indie, like if you don't want to, so even within the David Adeleke style, where he has a different publication name, right? There's another style where you are the entrepreneur or you are the person behind it. So there are two types of content creation after the investigative ones. There's one where you are Fisayo for Sudo. You have a team behind you that keeps your face out there. So you have a production studio, you have a manager, but the brand and the thing people are buying is you. Oh, Fisayo reviewed my product. Bam. But then there is me, right? That in this case, the journalists on my platforms or the reporters on my platform, they have a chance to be their own boss. I don't know if you know John Stone, if you know like all these people, like they can make a name for themselves.
I've seen a couple of articles from him.
Yes. So they can make a name for themselves. But me being the Don Jazzy in the background, I still have my own value. Right? I still have my own value, but my remas and people, they are popping up and down. So like just think a bit about the game you want to play, right? And the thing you have the might for. Once you think about that, then you can now think about the formats. Am I going to deploy textual? Textual is the easiest to start.
Okay.
Open Substack today, bam. Or am I going to deploy podcasts like Inside Ecosystem, The Flip, right?
Yeah.
Or am I going to do video, Founders Connect, right?
Yeah.
Now, all of them have different pros and cons, different reward cycles, different quality of customers, inputs, and payback period. But once you can outline what kind of content creator do I want to be, that's the word I will use for lack of a better word, not journalist. And then what format would I deploy? Then I think you'll be in a good place. But for me, in my experience, of course, we've gotten a few threads because we don't try to do a lot of investigative journalism because we don't have the bandwidth for it. Like
Tech Cabal?
Like a Tech Cabal. Tech Cabal is backed by investors. Tech Cabal has money. If you go to court, they'll follow you to court. You can shout.
Tech Cabal has the biggest balls I've ever. Tech Cabal doesn't play. They're like, yes, we wrote it. We wrote it. Come and beat me in my house.
Yeah, so that's it. But and Tech Cabal can put 2-3 people on a story. How many journalists work at BD? That I will put 3 people on one story. Bro, we don't publish any other thing. So I'm just there that I'm saying Tech Cabal. But make sure that you're shipping the right thing so that you don't get into trouble. But there are some things that I can't do, and I'll send Tech About it. You guys can run it. Blah, blah, blah. In terms of like other things, there's so much value you can bring to content creation. So for us, what we've enjoyed so far from me being in the industry is our perspective on business stories is slightly different. We can write some things that other publications can't write just because they either don't have that insider view.
Yes, I've noticed. Like I've noticed from the way you write. So like, this person
if
is
I write a story, I know what I'm talking about, especially if it's in like my field and stuff. So that's one. But the other thing that I was going to say is, what's your own long-term plan? So are you going to be funded by investors, or are you going to be bootstrapping? Right? What would be your sustainability plan? So we have ads, but we don't do ads the way everybody does ads because there is no real profitability goal. So I focus more on the user experience. Like, when you come to this site, is it fast? Does it load fast? The text, is it beautiful? The line height, does it allow for good psychedelic movement of your eye? So I focus on those things. When you share, does our handle come out? Right. So I focus on those things than, can I put programmatic ad so that when you're reading, before you read finish, one pop-up will come out, or this and that. And that's one thing. When we do ads, we want it to be as native to the platform as possible, so that it doesn't disrupt reader experience. But that's something that we care about. But we also care a lot about the protagonist in the stories we write. Sometimes, because we're also measured by views, number of clicks, people that write for us, or like some of the staff, gets drawn into doing things for clickbait or like for a lot of clicks, but that's not who we are at the core. Right? We care about this person you're writing about, or this company you're writing about. When their investor sees it, what would they say? Right? This person you are doing this, are you giving the person a fair chance? Are you biasing the opinion in a way that you will hang this person, or are you trying to present the facts? Because every human being has bias. So you can be writing a story and maybe it's something you've always been carrying on your chest. You now find an opportunity to it's or you can be convinced about something. But because some of the facts and the access to information you have is not public, you need to change the way you've structured it or put it out there. So it's a lot to consider. And I'll say, go well. I wish you all the
best. Speaking of you said something about threads, right? And we like juicy stories here. What do you think is the most absurd story you've ever written or you've ever published on BD? Like, when it was coming out, you were sweating that after this one comes out. Has there been anything like that so far, or maybe in the early days?
So I think I'll speak more about like the one, what I call it, investigative work I did personally.
Okay.
Right. And this was maybe 2019 or so. After I finished that story, I had headache. Spent like 3 days going through the story. I don't know if you remember one Polish entrepreneur that was building the Jumia of Africa, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to mention the name.
I think I remember.
He used to run a travel startup, before he now started doing this, blah, blah, blah.
There was some head-to-head between him and someone in Nigeria, I remember.
Many people. But basically, like, that was the first time I noticed we were cited by another publication. And this was a publication from South Africa. Right? And for me, I think that was like a game changer for us because we had access to exclusives, we had access to original stories. People directly involved called us, gave us like reports and stuff. So like it was really good. But again, like I said, I don't have the bandwidth for that personally. And I don't think the team now, I mean, there's a new leader there. So like, I don't really know where their head is at on that. But generally, if you're going to, people have reached out to us. So funny things have happened. So one day, another publication was going to carry a story about some guy.
Yeah.
Right. the guy now reaches out to us to say, and somebody is doing a hit job on me. I want to give you the full story. Like, I want to say my side. Blah, blah, blah. That their story is coming out tomorrow. I'm like, first of all, we cannot turn out something that quickly.
Yes.
But
There are
number
processes and stuff.
Yes, but number two, you're now going to put us in the middle of your issue with another publication and whatever is going on. So we're just like, thank you for reaching out to us, but like, we're sorry, we cannot do anything at this point, right? And I was happy we didn't, because you won't have had enough time to hear both sides.
Yeah,
You won't have, because for many people, tech publications are their courts. Like, that's the only place you feel like you can get justice. Because maybe the stress of going through an industrial court requires money or information or knowledge. But like, once they've outed that wicked CEO or that thing, you feel satisfied. Now maybe our money will come, or maybe our this will happen. You get? So like, it's a very sacred job. If you run a publication, you can kill someone, like you can marry a person, and you can, give people a voice. So it's always balancing. How do I make sure like we're doing right by all parties? But yes, people have reached out to us to try to get ahead of a story. Somebody had tried to bribe us with 100K to take down a story. It's been a bunch of things. And I wouldn't lie to you. Sometimes there's no black or white way of dealing with things. It's just about, what do you have energy for? What do you have energy for? Yeah.
So thank you so much. Personally, I think I enjoy the niche, or I like the niche you've taken, right? I read BD every Monday. It's every Monday that BD comes, right? Okay, good. I'm correct. I read BD every Monday, and I personally enjoy the big three. Straight to the point. Let's know what's going on. But recently, I've heard about LevelUp, your community. So, would you like to talk to us a little bit about that?
Okay, I feel like I should even bring the new person to speak about this, because this is his own baby.
Okay.
But essentially, like, LevelUp is another expression where we create content for tech talents. So the way we see our work in the ecosystem is like a triangle.
Okay.
So there is entrepreneur, there's investor, and there's the tech talent, right, that's working in this space. So over the years, we've always done series and shows and things that promote either or all of those parties. So for instance, we did Under the Hoodie.
Oh yeah, I remember
like
that.
A few years ago, for the tech talent. Then we did Investors Corner for potential or aspiring investors. Then we did Zero to Scale for entrepreneurs and operators to talk about how they grew. So I think LevelUp is going to be a newsletter for tech professionals, right? Where they can learn how to grow in their career, blah 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 blah.
Okay.
But again, for the current stage of BD, I'm probably the worst person to
Fair enough.
I can speak to history, I can speak to values and stuff, but yeah.
Fair enough.
So who is the best person to talk to?
So Daniel Adeyemi.
Okay.
Daniel used to be at Tech Cabal.
Yes.
So you poached him, essentially.
It's a long story.
All right. So Benjamin, before we let you go, I think we have like just two final questions actually. Our first one is, if you could rebuild BD from scratch, like right now, if you woke up and everything had changed and you had the chance to rebuild BD from scratch, what are some things you do differently, and what are things that you would leave to remain the same?
Every time you look back, you always feel like you could have done something differently. Even if when you were starting, you thought about 5 years from now, that's what will my future self say.
Yeah.
I think one obvious one is like spending more time on the name of the publication. My brother, I don't think I would have done it differently.
Okay.
I don't think I would have done it differently.
Okay.
This is why. Like, there are many reasons, and every time I talk to people, a different reason comes up. Number one, if you spend more time on the name, you won't have launched as fast as you launched, because there'll be that inertia of, I don't have all my ducks in a row. I need things to be perfect before I can go live, blah, 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 blah. So inertia, breaking inertia. Number two, the reason why many journalistic platforms or many media platforms are a bit reckless is because there's no one person you can tie to it, right? So everybody hides behind the public name or like an entity name that is soulless, right? Recently, we published something, right, on the platform. I didn't write it though, but the fact that I was carrying my name, they were reaching out to me. But there are many platforms that no name founders, no name pushers, right? You can't just reach out to them, right? So there's no accountability, but if it's your name, there's a level of accountability. So that's number 2. Number 3, at that time, I didn't even know what this was going to become, right? I thought to myself, first of all, is this thing going to last up to 5 years? If it's going to last up to 5 years, at the year 5, I can think about the name. 2, how many people will contribute to this platform? At the moment, it was just me. So I'm like, this is Benjamin Dada's personal blog in the beginning, but quickly it evolved from a personal blog. But 3, like, even if we wanted to keep the name, are there platforms in the world that are bearing people's names but are treated like media publications? Yes. A bad example, not bad example, but a different niche example, Linda Ikeji. But with a popular blog, Bloomberg.com.
I was going to say that.
Bloomberg is someone's name?
Michael Bloomberg, yeah.
Oh, wow. Today I learned.
Let me bust your head. If you, like last year, somebody saw me like, Benjamin Dada. Oh, you're a person.
Oh!
To me, that was success and that was validation. Because the reason why people are worried about the name is because they know the person one-on-one. For many people, a name is just an identifier. It's just something that they can use to point and say, oh, reference this thing. So like that name thing, I feel like I might not have done it differently if I go back 5 years. Because
I like that, yeah.
There was just so much going on and I didn't want to add that to my list of worries. Bam. Now, the second thing is maybe making it clear early on. So one of the challenges that I'm having from carrying this burden of the name is it has overridden my own personal identity. Right. So now nobody sees me for anything else than media. Right. So even when I go to companies, they're like, I know an influencer. Sometimes that is very insulting. My father did not pay whatever amount he paid in CU and in this thing for you to just call me an influencer because they use it derogatorily sometimes to just say, what do you know? You're just an influencer. Right. But other times people just spend a longer time trying to understand, okay, what can he do? What has he done? Like, because the media stuff. So
that's like taking over.
I'm like, maybe I should have been building my 9 to 5 or like my core tech expression on the side. So I had a Medium blog, right? But I was just using that for like vibes. But if I was trying to position for proper like 9 to 5 jobs and stuff, maybe I would have been building that on the side so that people know that so benjamindada.com can be the media publication name, but Benjamin Dada, the human being, is this, right?
Okay.
I think the third thing is what else? I don't know. I think things have gone the way I imagined it in some sense because I'm like, this is in some way an experiment. And if it works, then I can improve it. So we didn't raise money from anybody. We just built it bootstrap. I was writing solo. I think I had like 800K saved up and I put it into building a company a year after. And then I hired 2 people into the company and I just let the thing take on its life of its own. So like, I don't know if I would have changed much about that, but maybe if I sleep this night, I'll remember what I could have changed.
please reach out to us when you remember. So we always ask our guests this question before we round up, and because you are so versatile, right? You have like different experiences and whatnot. So we're going to tweak it a little bit for you. So the question is, what's the next best industry for you after fintech? Right, like we know you've dabbled in a number of things, right? And you I don't think anybody can speak on fintech, just like you told us that if somebody was coming to talk to you about content writing, like, what does this person intend to teach me, right? And I feel like it's like that for you as well in terms of fintech. You've you've done a lot, right? What's the next best industry after fintech for you? Or if you never got into fintech, what industry do you think you'd be in currently? And it can be tech or non-tech. It depends. Yeah.
It's interesting. So two things. One is media and the other is fraud and compliance. For media, when I was doing my MSc, I actually applied to Financial Times. Now, one of the assessments was we should find a code on the website. Meanwhile, we were applying as, I think, tech journalists and stuff on Financial Times.
Okay.
Code on the website. We looked at the website, did the website. But because I'd done like web programming and stuff, it was in the it was in the page source.
Oh.
So when you inspect the elements, you see the code there. So I picked it and I put it there. It was a very, very nice thing. Like, oh, I know this. But I think the media space has a lot of bureaucracy in terms of this is how things are done. But if you bring a system thinking or like a design thinking approach to it, there's a lot you can create, right? I don't have the bandwidth and I don't have the resources to do as much as I wanted to do with media, but like, there's so much you can create to build media as a product in the way you would build a startup SaaS product, right? So I feel like that would be one industry to really experiment in. And I think a couple of publications are getting it right from one angle or the other. So rest of world, the usability of their website is insane. It's great. Like, the speed, the design, the layouts, blah, 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 everything, right? The information has authentication for users. So, they can log in, blah, blah, blah. And then you can begin to build preferences and serve. So media is something that if money wasn't an issue, to me, I just don't feel like it's a very lucrative space, right? But that's something.
Okay.
But then more recently, due to like my normal 9-to-5 work, fraud and compliance has become interesting to me. So for 4 months, I was trying to sell an AI-based transaction monitoring solution.
Oh, wow.
Now, fraud and compliance in this case is interesting because it is adjacent to fintech.
Okay.
Mostly.
Yeah.
So for every fintech transaction, that is a transaction that can be monitored. Right?
Yeah.
So when you're building your fraud and compliance solution, you need to think about, where would you plug it in? So are you going to run any checks on the beneficiary? Are you going to run checks on the transaction to look at the patterns that can tell you whether, it's likely to be fraudulent or not likely to be fraudulent? And how are you going to do that decisioning? So is it going to be a traditional rule engine where if this, do that? Or is it going to be AI based? Or is it going to be hybrid? So there's some AI, there's some rule, and then both of them produce a risk score that your team can use to evaluate a transfer before it's completed. So I think fraud and compliance is very interesting. I know there's one of my friends, he's built Rulebase.co. I don't know if you know Chidi Williams.
We had him on this podcast. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yes,
cool guy, dope guy. We know a little bit about him, So
yes. He built Rulebase.co and it's in the compliance space. So what makes it more interesting is from a technology point of view, you can combine AI, combine industry experience to try to create something that will be useful. But then what makes it startup-y is the uncertainty in the customer, the revenue or operating model, etc. So like figuring out how all of that will plug in, especially for like a Rulebase, for instance, is very interesting. Yes, everybody does compliance, but can you build a product people will pay for? Right? So that makes it very, very interesting.
Also, I think my own issue is stuff like that. Are you worried about like data, like people's data being handled by AI, right? Because I hear people say something like, it's a lot of stuff in this AI stuff is essentially like a black box, right? You don't really know how it's going to eventually play out, right? But I think it also depends on how you structure it. I may be wrong here.
I think that if you're going to do AML, like with AML with AI, you have to do a lot of things on your own side. So you need to be a company that has run for a while, that has access to a lot of customer data. So if you're just, 2 years old, you have to rely on an external party to be able to build a sensible model. For companies like Stripe that have been in existence since 2006 or so, I think they do have AML models that are based on machine learning that they even sell to their customers. So because they have all the data, they know that Chuka went to buy rice from Basira, and then later in the day, you went to buy something from some website. So they're able to connect you regardless of where you spent from, and then use that to build something for their customers. But I don't know if every company is able to just do that on their own, because whose data are they going to base their decisions on? But yeah, it's an interesting thing.
All right. Benjamin, thank you so much for, joining us on the show. We're essentially done. It was so fun to have you here, answer all our questions and give us a little sneak peek into your life and BD and growing and learning and whatnot. So we're so excited we had you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. Good luck editing the podcast.
Yeah, we will. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We release new episodes every month. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you enjoy the show as much as we do, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review so the podcast reaches more people.
A huge shout out to the amazing team that makes this show possible. This includes John Ayeni, Faith Idowu, Angela Adelowo, and Ukichukwu Nwachukwu. Connect with us on social media at Inside the Techos on Instagram and Twitter, and Inside the Techosystem on LinkedIn. All right, I'll see you in the next one.